Think about the last time you spent an hour customizing a dozen connection requests to people you barely know. Or maybe the last time you came home completely drained from a giant industry mixer. You know the feeling, right? You probably handed out business cards, sent a bunch of messages into the digital void, and ended up totally exhausted with very little to show for it. We've all been there. It really just feels like throwing spaghetti at a wall and hoping something, anything, sticks. But what if the solution to this exhausting problem wasn't about trying harder? What if it wasn't about talking to more people? What if instead a complex mathematical equation could completely solve your professional networking struggles?
Welcome to this explainer. Today, we are completely throwing out that old spray and pray method of building your professional circle. We're looking at something called the Eigenvector strategy for professional networking. We are going to take some deeply fascinating concepts straight out of the world of social network analysis and explore exactly how they translate into a high-leverage, highly strategic roadmap for your career. So, if you're intellectually curious about how the underlying math of human networks can stop you from wasting your energy and start actually connecting you with the people who move the needle, let's dive right in.
Here's our roadmap for today. Section 1, the math of influence. Section 2, decoding the big nodes. Section 3, the LinkedIn content playbook. And finally, Section 4, the freelancer success roadmap.
Okay, let's dive into this with Section 1, the math of influence. To really upgrade how we build professional relationships, we first have to understand the underlying equation of human networks, and that is called eigenvector centrality. Now, don't let the mathematical term intimidate you. I promise it makes sense. In social network analysis, a node is literally just a person. It's you, it's me, it's your boss. What this concept tells us is that your importance in a network is not determined by how many hands you shake. Actually, scratch that. It's the exact opposite. Your importance is determined entirely by the influence of the specific nodes you connect to. It's a massive paradigm shift. Think of it kind of like being at a massive industry expo. You could spend 3 hours shaking hands with 50 random attendees who honestly have very little leverage in the industry. Or you could have a single, highly meaningful 10-minute coffee with the main event organizer who personally knows every single keynote speaker. Mathematically speaking, that one connection to a highly influential node gives you secondary access to an entire high-value network. Understanding this reveals the exact difference between how most people network and how the top 1% network. Degree centrality is the quantity-focused approach. This is the professional spending hours customizing 100 connection requests just to hit that shiny 500-plus connections vanity badge online. It's literally the digital equivalent of shouting into a crowded room, and it is exactly what leads to chronic networking exhaustion. Eigenvector centrality, on the other hand, is ruthlessly quality-focused. It's all about finding those highly influential nodes, the people who naturally elevate everyone around them, and strategically engaging with them. One meaningful connection with a central hub is worth 1,000 superficial connections on the periphery. So I want you to take a second and audit your own networking style right now. Are you chasing the exhausting volume of degree centrality or the strategic leverage of eigenvector centrality? Moving right along, let's look at Section 2, decoding the big nodes.
Now, what's really interesting about this is that once we understand the math, we absolutely have to talk about the human beings behind these equations. Because when you actually try to connect with these highly influential big nodes, you can't just treat them like a structural target on a graph. Listen to this sentiment, which is incredibly common among industry experts. I often feel less valued for my expertise and more like I'm just being used for my connections by newcomers. Think about the daily reality of these central hubs. These are folks who have spent decades mastering their craft. Yet day in and day out, their inbox is completely flooded by ambitious newcomers who just want a shortcut. They want a quick introduction, they want a 15-minute brain-picking session, they basically just want to extract value. If you approach a big node with that extraction mindset, their walls are going to go up immediately, and honestly, the math won't even matter.
So the answer to breaking through those walls lies in value alignment. This right here is the psychological core of true mentorship. You have to bring genuine, undeniable value to the table. You absolutely cannot just be a pure extractor. A big node doesn't need another person asking them for a favor. What they desperately want is to interact with someone who actually respects their work, engages deeply with their ideas, and contributes back to their ecosystem. They highly value someone who will stress test their theories, or maybe share a unique data point from the trenches, or even synthesize their complex work into something more accessible. If you can align what you offer with what they fundamentally care about, you instantly separate yourself from the thousands of newcomers who are just looking for a handout.
So the crucial point is how we put this into practice. Section 3, the LinkedIn content playbook.
How do we translate this high-level math and psychology into specific, tangible digital actions on a platform like LinkedIn?
while our source material lays out exactly how to signal high value to industry experts without sounding desperate. Here are 3 specific content framing techniques you need to start using literally today. Technique number 1, share insights directly learned from the expert's work. Instead of tagging them just to say, hey, great post, write a breakdown saying something like, I implemented your Q3 marketing framework this week and it boosted our open rates by 12%. Here's the specific tweak I made. That proves you're an active executor, not just a fanboy. Technique number 2, post thoughtful, high-level industry questions. Instead of asking for a favor, ask something like, given the shift toward AI-generated content, do you foresee a premium returning to unedited long-form human essays? Big nodes are thought leaders. A question that pushes the boundaries of their industry shows them you're essentially a peer in training. And technique number 3, highlight relevant community trends without self-promotion. Summarize 3 key takeaways from a really dense, niche webinar so the big node doesn't have to watch it themselves. Be a curator of good information.
Let's move to and see how this builds into our final part. Section 4, the Freelancer Success Roadmap.
Let's bring all this to life by applying it to a specific narrative. I want you to imagine a 25-year-old freelance graphic designer who's trying to break into the tech startup space. In step 1, they enter the InfoHub community starting at absolute zero. No connections, 0-degree centrality. In step 2, they don't just start spamming founders with their portfolio. No way. They use the Eigenvector Principle to identify the highly influential big node, which in this case is perhaps a well-known startup advisor who hosts a super popular podcast. In step 3, they get to work. They execute those LinkedIn framing techniques we just talked about. So instead of asking for a job, they tag the advisor with a beautiful, unprompted infographic summarizing the advisor's latest hour-long podcast episode. Over time, step 4 happens totally naturally. They establish value alignment. The advisor starts to see this designer as a true value add, someone who makes their ideas look brilliant, and they even start using the graphic in their newsletter, which leads organically right into step 5, successfully securing the mentor. The designer achieves massive professional leverage not by exhausting themselves with endless cold outreach, but by systematically applying the math of influence to the exact right node.
Which brings us to the absolute most important part of this entire explainer, your actual application of this strategy. I want you to take a breath, look at your current professional circle, and really think about this question. Who is the biggest node in your network right now, and what specific value are you bringing to them tomorrow? It is time to stop the exhausting, volume-based spray and pray approach to your career. Find the nodes that actually matter, figure out exactly what they value, and let the underlying math of human networks do the heavy lifting for your professional growth. Thank you so much for joining me to unpack these fascinating insights today, and I seriously challenge you to make that high-value connection this week. See you next time.